In this video, we are going to learn the interrogatives, or in Spanish, los interrogativos. We use these words to form questions in the same way we do in English and in other languages. So let's see what they are in Spanish. ¿Qué, what, quién or quiénes? These depend on whether you're talking about a singular or a plural form of the following word. ¿Dónde, where, cuándo, when, cómo, how. And then we have the next ones. ¿Cuál, cuáles? Again, singular or plural means which. ¿Cuánto or cuánta? Depending on the gender this time, means how much. ¿Cuántos or cuántas? Again, depending on the gender, mean how many. What's interesting in Spanish is that apart from the question mark that we have at the end of a sentence or a question word, we also have an inverted question mark that comes before the actual question or question word, if that's the only thing that the question consists of. So this, what actually does is it indicates for us that what's coming is a question. So the following phrase is a question. We understand this beforehand. Now let's learn a bit more about each of the interrogatives. ¿Qué means what? And now we're going to go over several examples to see how it's used. ¿Qué haces? What are you doing? Or the correct Spanish pronunciation is ¿qué haces? ¿Qué lees? What are you reading? ¿Qué quieres? For example, what do you want? So we can use ¿qué in all of these scenarios to ask questions. Very simple, very similar logic. ¿Qué doesn't change its form? It's always ¿qué. And you're going to see that in some of the other interrogatives, there are some changes based on some factors, but it's nothing crazy. With ¿qué, we can add prepositions to ask slightly more complicated questions. In the first slide, you probably thought, okay, all of these questions, but I didn't see how to say why. Well, this is how to say why. ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué preguntas? Why are you asking? And in the same way, we can form other question words. ¿En qué piensas? What are you thinking about? So here, the en qué is corresponding to what and about. Just the structure in English is slightly different, and we have the preposition at the end of the question. ¿Para qué necesitas esto? What do you need this for? ¿Para qué? Or for what do you need this? Maybe you've heard this this way in spoken English as well. And last example, ¿de qué me hablas? Again, what are you talking about? I've put in to me in brackets because in Spanish we have me, which refers to me, but in English the translation doesn't sound so natural. So again, the translations are similar, but in Spanish, depending on the context, we use different prepositions. So be careful because not everything when we translate it is like for like. So the other thing that I want to talk about is, let's come back to ¿por qué? ¿Por qué means why, as we already established, and it consists of two words. Well, how are you going to respond to why? How do you say because? Well, because is the same, kind of. but there is a difference. So we have por qué, but it's one word and we don't have the tilde, which means a stress over the vowel. We don't have the stress over the e in que. When we pronounce the two, you can hear that for asking questions, we say por qué, but when we respond with because, we say por qué. So there is no stress, but it's kind of here on the O, por qué. So be careful with that. Don't say por qué I did this, this, and that. Say por qué I did this and that. It's very slight, but you can definitely hear it. I hope this was helpful and made sense. Let me know if you have any questions on this in the comments. Quién means who. Quiénes, who is or who is it, if maybe you're responding for if someone is knocking on your door. Quiénes. ¿A quién estás llamando? Who are you calling? ¿Con quién hablas? Who are you talking to or with? Con means with, so the literal translation is who are you talking with? ¿Quiénes son tus amigos? Who are your friends? ¿Quiénes trabajan en esta oficina? Who works in this office? I'm sure you noticed the two different forms of quién, quién and quiénes. The difference is that we use quién when we have one object, so singular form. When we use quiénes, we are talking about multiple objects, so our object is in plural form. ¿Quiénes son tus amigos? ¿Quiénes trabajan en esta oficina? So the conjugation of the verb is telling us that we are talking about multiple people. If you don't know how to conjugate verbs in Spanish, I'm going to leave a link to my video that explains this in the description underneath. ¿Cuál? Which. ¿Cuál? Very similarly to quién, we adhere to whether we're talking about singular or plural form of our direct object. ¿Cuál te gusta más? Which one do you like more? ¿Cuál es la capital de Bolivia? Which is the capital of Bolivia? ¿Cuál es su número de teléfono? Which is his or her telephone number? These are singular. And then plural. ¿Cuáles son tus libros favoritos? Which are your favorite books? ¿Cuáles de estas películas has visto? Which of these movies have you seen? ¿Cuáles son tus amigos en esta foto? Which are your friends in this photo? So again, we have the ES ending for plural. I've also included a bit of a grammar example here, which we had with quién as well. And this is the last example just below all of the rest. ¿A cuál de tus hermanos quieres más? So now, why do we have this a in the beginning? Well, it's very simple. When our direct object in the sentence is an animate object, this means it's either human or animal or an animal, then we need to put and use a in front of our object. In this case, when we ask questions, this a goes to the front or to the very beginning of our question. We don't need to use a when our object is inanimate. So just something like a pen or a desk. This is inanimate, but animate is when it's a human or an animal. And this doesn't relate only to quién or cuál. This is just a grammar rule for the direct object in the sentence. Cuánto. Cuánto needs to be coherent with not only the singular or plural forms, but also the gender of the words. For example, let's look at the first singular group of examples. ¿Cuánto necesita Mario al mes? How much does Mario need a month? We understand that it's most probably talks about money, and money is masculine. So the next example, ¿Cuánto dinero tienes? How much money do you have? ¿Cuánto cuesta? How much does it cost? So in the first and in the third examples, ¿Cuánto necesita Mario? And ¿Cuánto cuesta? Sounds a bit like a general question, generalization. So in these cases, we use cuánto. But if we are asking about a specific thing, for example, in the last example of this group, the milk, leche, leche is feminine. And we want to ask how much milk is left, we say cuánta leche queda. So cuánto ends with o when it's a masculine subject or object, should be subject, and it ends with a when it's feminine. ¿Cuánta leche queda? Let's move on to the other group. Nothing crazy here, just adding a bit of more detail. ¿Cuántos amigos tienes? So we have OS because we're now plural, but amigos can be not only just male friends, but a mix of male and female, so a general group of friends. ¿Cuántos amigos tienes? How many? Now the translation here is how many because we have plural, something that we can count. The other thing I didn't mention is that cuánto and cuánta are used for uncountables. So, for example, sugar, leche, milk, coffee, bread. You can't really count exactly these things. So, we use cuánto and cuánta. How much? Cuántos and cuántas we also use when we have countables, something that we can count. For example, in our third example of the second group, ¿Cuántas manzanas quieres? How many apples do you want? You can count 1, 2, 3 apples, but you can't say 1, 2, 3 sugars. I mean, you can in certain situations, but generally sugar cannot be counted. And yeah, let's just go over the other examples. ¿Cuántos coches hay en el garaje? How many cars are there in the garage? ¿Cuántas páginas lees cada día? How many pages do you read every day? And the last interrogatives, ¿Dónde, cómo, and cuándo? These are very easy, no forms, they don't change. ¿Dónde is where, cómo is how, cuándo is when. ¿Dónde vives? Where do you live? ¿Dónde está la estación? Where is the station? ¿Cómo estás? How are you? ¿Cómo llegas a la escuela? How do you get to school? ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? When is your birthday? ¿Cuándo empieza la clase? When does the class start? Pretty easy. If you learned something from this video, please subscribe to my channel for more.